UX is probably one of the cheapest ways that you can add the most amount of value to a product. The misconception is maybe that's expensive.
Marie Whittington, founder of Pepperplane, a fully remote UX agency.
What I think is a misconception is that whole thing of what got you to that won't necessarily work when you're scaling that up. I think we're going to start merging those roles quite a lot in the next few years. Our jobs as UX designers and as designers in general is to create experiences that users really love. I just really hope that AI lifts the bar.
Hey everyone, today on Brilliance Talks we've got Marie Whittington, founder of Pepperplane, a fully remote UX agency built long before remote became fashionable. She grew the company from South Africa to roughly $60,000 in revenue with zero marketing spend, serving fintech, healthcare, and security clients globally. But here's the tension. She says she's the bottleneck, but now she's trying to break the first million, push into bigger product budgets, and navigate a world where designers are becoming builders through AI. So if you're a founder juggling growth, complexity, and the fear that you are the bottleneck, this one will hit close to home. Marie, it's great to have you here today.
Thanks so much, Simac. Really excited to be chatting to you. Thanks for having me.
Tell me, why did UX feel urgent enough to build an agency around it?
Yeah, so good question. I basically started off in my journey, my career journey, working with agencies, working with a lot of tech teams, software development teams, startups. And what I saw early on was that there are really great technical capabilities within these teams, absolutely brilliant. But what was lacking was the design side and design leading that process. So I saw that there was a lot of value that design could add if it does, if it's brought in earlier in the process. It really helps with clarity, helps bring everybody together, takes user kind of needs into account. And really then the outcome of those products are just much better user experiences, a better product market fit in the end. So I saw how design, if brought in at the right time, could make a big difference. And I thought to myself, let me start something that could really focus on that as a niche. And that's where Pepperplane came from.
Love it. I'm a big fan of UX, but for the audience listening in, right, talk to us, why does UX play such an important journey through the customer experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So any product that you use, normally, if you love it, it's got a great user experience. If you hate it, it's got a very bad user experience. So what user experience brings to the table is it matches up business goals, user needs in a way where that little kind of overlap becomes the features that we then choose to design in the product and that we focus on. So what that means is less friction when someone's using your product. And that's a win for both the user, the end user and the participant, as well as the business, because they can just deliver value to their clients in a much more frictionless way.
Got it. And when it comes to Pepperplane, which I love the name too, what moment stopped Pepperplane feeling like freelance work for you?
It's probably about 9 years ago. I was doing freelance work throughout my career. I always just loved to keep my fingers in a whole bunch of pies and really enjoyed working with different teams. But then 9 years ago, I had my daughter for my first kid, basically. And I decided, you know what, I've built my freelance career up to a point where I can pivot this into a real business. I can give myself the flexibility that I need there. And that's when I decided to flip the switch on Pepperplane, so to speak. That's when I, started, basically quit my day job, focused on the business itself, and then started building a team around me to help deliver more and better value to our clients.
And just let's go slightly deeper into that part, right? Because a lot of, I would say, entrepreneurs or founders right now, they are doing similar to what you're doing, freelance work. What is the kind of key points that you would consider or giving advice to somebody who wants to flip from freelance work, like a side hustle, and they have a permanent job, to a full-time business?
It's a good question. I think you got to do it for the right reasons. For me, it was, firstly, I saw that I can deliver value directly into multiple teams. It's kind of, I proved it through my freelance that it could be done in consulting. Secondly, my long-term motivation to create work environment that's got flexibility, that can mold a little bit and create a really healthy work-life balance for me was very important. And then Thirdly, something to remember is when you go from being a freelancer to being a full-time founder or running a business, the roles are very different. All of a sudden, you start managing a team of people. You are the C-suite of that business, so to speak. So it's very different role. You go from just being the designer, the executor, to doing all of those things, especially if you're building a team. But that being said, I think it's something that I gravitated towards a lot. I was lucky enough to work really closely with the founders and the CEOs of the businesses that I was employed in and that I worked in. And it was just inspirational for me to see how they operate, how they moved, how they kind of looked and saw things around them. And it really inspired me. And I think someone like me, I don't come from a business background necessarily. And that just really fascinated me. So the other part of that was me just being really interested in what it would be like to build a business and kind of pursuing that adventure. So seeing that as another kind of way or a creative outlet was really exciting to me. So, what I would say to people wanting to start their business is make sure you're doing it for the right reasons. Make sure you've got the motivation and those reasons so that when it does get really hard and it does get really tricky down the line, there is something to kind of sustain your energy. And that, along with that, surround yourself with people that know more than you. Hire people into your team that are better than you at the things that they need to focus on.
Yes, very important. And I like that way you said hire the people who are smarter than you for the role that you want them to fulfill. I think that's great. And also in terms of, doing the passion and the motivation out there, I think that's important. Yeah, no, well said. And you started this in South Africa, right? How did South Africa shape how you lead globally today? Because today you're in the US, right?
From a leadership perspective, I don't think it really changed much around how I lead. What not the environment of South Africa specifically. I think in general, the leadership style that I like is I've learned from people that I've admired as leaders, and that's shaped a lot of how I like to lead my team. That being said, I've tried to tweak it in ways that also resonates with how I would want to be led as a team member, having been on that side of the coin as well. So we operate, for instance, a team that is extremely self motivated. They're very, we call it radical responsibility. As designers, I liked being there from the start right to the end where this thing gets deployed or finalized. So what we do is our designers literally work with clients directly. There's no middlemen. There's the communication is uninterrupted, and they take responsibility for that work. And I think because we're working with creatives, that gives them a lot of energy back.
Yes, you don't want to kill the creative spark, right, within the team.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes. So who helped you shape that business kind of acumen right now? Because there are a lot of interesting points that you mentioned out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So my dad is an architect. He still is. Worked for himself, had his own practice his whole life. And I think I picked up a lot of the entrepreneurial spirit through basically growing up sitting underneath his desk, hearing the conversations, also going through the struggles and the ups and downs of markets, of economy, work fluctuations, and seeing honestly a case study of a whole lifetime play out in front of me in this regard. So I think to a certain extent it toughened me up a little bit in terms of taking on the entrepreneurial journey. I felt like it's almost like that was a default almost for me. I wanted to be able to take care of my own time. I wanted to be able to have a lot of that same experience, and it kind of was always in the back of my mind. So I think there's a lot of those aspects that formed and shaped that as well. And then, as I said, once again, working with amazing teams, just having really good mentors along the way. For me, the business is a way for me to really get a chance to work and deal with awesome, interesting, just amazing people. And for me, that's like such a big check. If I could just do that and, in any way, I would. So that gives me a lot of energy. So I think the business is one vehicle for me to do that. But yeah, early on, I've had a taste of the entrepreneurial journey and the ups and downs, the privileges that come with it, but also the hardships.
Yes, absolutely. And tell me, from the little girl who was sitting under her dad's desk to where you are today, what kind of top 3 lessons you've taken away from your dad or he has taught you?
Oh, wow. Top 3 lessons. It's a tricky one, Simac. I'd say everything is cyclical. What feels really bad now will pass. What feels really good now will also kind of go through dips and so on. And it's about persistence. So I think that comes down to, if I had to summarize it, as persistence. Keep at it, keep doing amazing work, keep focus on the value that you're producing. Doesn't matter, don't shortchange the client on the value and what you're producing there. So I think those two really stand out for me. And then also just enjoy, and I think also just like try to get to know people. So from a networking client, and also just as we're working with teams of people and clients, etc., get to know them a little bit more, scratch a little bit underneath the surface. You might, some really amazing relationships that come out of those. My dad's always been good at just like talking to people, making really interesting connections. And I've always thought that was a lot of fun, and relationships that survive long after the business engagement is complete. And I think that's where a lot of value and a lot of really gold, is in those relationships. Yeah.
I love what you said, right? The persistence, the resiliency, and the value, right? And getting to know people. Now, you mentioned also an interesting point that you would like to work with really smart people, get smart people on your team. How do you go about identifying those people or recruiting those people?
Yeah, sure. So I will say we've got a small team. And the reason we've got a small team is because they are really, really good at what they do, which means, we've got concentrated skill, concentrated knowledge. And the way we go about that is pretty organic. Once again, having these types of conversations through referrals, through other designers that I trust. Most of the people on our team we've worked with for many years. I trust them. They trust our process, and kind of bring in people again out of their networks that are really good. So I think that's the one side of it. It has been very organic in the way that we've built out the team, and we haven't gone on just a hiring spree. It's been literally 9 years of finding some of the best talent that's out there. So very organic. But that also being said, I think our way of working attracts a very specific type of designer and creative. As I mentioned, the radical responsibility, the need to have flexibility with their time, and just going about finding those people through very organic conversations, relationships, etc. So we've been lucky. We've been lucky.
Yes. Okay. Fantastic. Tell me what actually broke when the team passed 8 to 10 people.
I'd say hierarchy starts to play a very interesting role there. As with any team, when it's really a few people, doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to have all of this because everybody is literally talking every day, chatting about it. So I'd say we had to bring a little bit more process to our structures. It's always a fine line between overloading the team and the kind of operations with process and that overhead, and trying to stay lean, stay as nimble as possible, be as flexible as we can for our clients because our work really requires that, but also still produce extremely good work. So what we did is we said we want to not stop producing extremely amazing work and output. What do we need to do? What processes do we need to put in place to facilitate that as our first and number one priority? And along with that, client communication needs to be on par. The user experience that our clients have need to be a premium experience. So we put those processes into place while at the same time trying to be as lean as possible. And I'll be honest with you, we applied our own design thinking methodologies that we've been using for clients' projects for years on our own kind of processes. So we kind of rolled that back on ourselves, and we said, okay, let's design this. Let's design this from the bottom up. And with our team, we developed those things. So what started breaking, things like communication, quality check, we could see those would be risks. We identified them and we built the processes around them.
Fantastic. And in that journey, I think what you are mentioning, the systematization of it, right? How far are you now into that journey? Is it fully systematized, or there's still some points where you would say, oh, I wish we could have done this better. We should do this better.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's always room for improvement. And as the market and everything is changing, I mean, I'm sure we're going to speak a little bit about AI at some point in this conversation, like everything. But I think as those things change, we constantly try to improve, change, be flexible around it, because what might have worked 3 years ago might not be working now. And we need to keep an open mind about it and keep on improving little by little. So definitely there are things that I would change now that was a sure bet back then. I think we're also looking at a lot of automation in terms of operational things with AI, which is great. And as I said, our team is small, so it's quick for us to pivot into a different solution. We're lucky in that regard. We're not a mammoth 100, 200 people team that takes a long time to change or pivot. So
Love it. How do you maintain the culture of the company? Or what is the culture first, and how do you maintain the culture when you have a fully remote team, right?
it's also about making sure that everybody's on that same mindset of responsibility. Our whole team thinks in that same way. That helps, where there's no like one person isn't bringing the whole team down or doing something completely different. So just adding people to the team that really gel well in that professional regard. Along with that, we try to do touch points on things like Zoom or Google Meet as regularly as possible. And we sprinkle in a little bit of cultural touch points along the way as well. Like we'll do a studio session every 2 weeks where the team all participates. We share something, we learn together. We've got kind of weekly, twice a week, we've got team alignment sessions, really short little stand-ups, but it just brings everybody together. And then we live in Slack. And the team will kind of get together on projects and kind of have a lot of communication with each other like that. So outside of just the project communication, we try and create these spaces where it's really easy for them to get together, hang out. And then in person is always difficult if everybody's all over, but we try and facilitate that as well as much as we can.
I love it. Marie, when it comes to yourself, when did you realize you were the sales bottleneck in the business?
I think I always knew that was going to be me, and that's just one of those things, founder-led sales for any company starting out, that's where it's at. Especially if you're going from being the freelancer and being the person doing all the work to then, bringing business into the funnel. I think that's a natural progression. And I think that is something that's been top of mind, or it knew it was always going to be the bottleneck. That being said, I really enjoy that process. I really enjoy the sales process. So at the same time, I'm trying to figure out, where do I hand off? Where do I fit into this whole process? Because there is also something about seeing what's out there, seeing what the market is. Even if we do a pitch, I don't get it, I still learn something from it. So I still enjoy learning what's out there, how different customers are seeing things, what the buying patterns are. But now, as we grow and as we're trying to scale, that is something where I'm going to have to start building out that operating system a little bit more.
One of the questions I'd like to ask, founders on this journey is, how much do you change, or what role you need to change to pass the million mark?
I think you touched on it. Something around the sales role, probably. I feel we've got such a solid operational structure and delivery structure that we could probably deliver on anything. And I feel that's probably the next place where we'll spend some time is actually building out that lead funnel. Yeah.
Got it. How do you explain UX value to a CFO? Because you work with midsize and markets, right? So how do you explain UX value to a CFO?
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite simple. If you look at the companies in the S&P 500, the top 10 of those companies are extremely focused, hyper-focused on user experience. They design services, their products, everything like around their users. And they outperform the market by like over 200% or something like that, right? It's crazy. You can check the stat, but it's quite significant. And the reason for that is that they make sure that what they're producing is the right thing for their users. They are very certain about product market fit. That means they're cutting everything else around it that's not necessary. So it's very optimized in that regard. The bottom line is products, services, software that's designed with user experience and target market fit in mind are just really efficient. So that's one conversation that I would have with that. And I would basically say, if that's your end goal, optimized efficiency, which means more margin, which means more predictability, that means paying attention, very close attention to your UX and making sure your customers enjoy using the products and services that you provide.
Love it. Let's bring that to life. Can you just share an example, right? We've just spoken about those concepts in this term. So give me an example for the audience listening in so they can appreciate it more.
If I had to think of a specific project we've been working on, we just wrapped up with a great startup in South Africa, and they are in the security space, the personal security space. And we basically worked on their whole ecosystem, from the panic button on someone's phone through to the control centers that deploy the actual response teams, through to the management and the admin in the back end. So what we looked at there was a variety of different roles and users, right? So we've got the support team, we've got the dispatch team, but we also have the guy sitting with his app in his car. Maybe there was an incident and he's got to call somebody, or is in his house, somebody's scared. She needs to do a call out. So putting ourselves in the minds of all those different users and then producing and designing specific outcomes for them was extremely rewarding. But also, what was interesting in that case is it could literally be a case of life and death. If we don't design this app in a way that's intuitive, that's easy to use, that's frictionless, it could literally mean life or death for someone. So we really kind of appreciated that and put a lot of effort into understanding exactly how it would be used, going into the behavioral kind of, theory of that as well. But then at the other end, we've got people sitting in control rooms, dispatching these things, and we need to design software for them. They're sitting there 8 hours a day, looking at a screen, under fluorescent lights. We need to make sure whatever we're designing there is just as intuitive and specific for that role. So very different kind of approach there. But what happens if we don't take all of these users and all these, things into account, you end up with a very diluted, very kind of average product where, if you dig in a little bit deeper and you do it right, you end up with mass efficiency gains on all sides. And in this case, the stakes were high, so to speak.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. Tell me, what's the a stupidest misconception that founders have about UX right now?
I think right now, being in this age of AI, it's quite interesting. I think a lot of people think the tools can just give you all the answers, and whatever tool you're using would just be fine, which is probably true to an extent. You could probably get to a proof of concept with a very decent UX, a very decent UI, and you'd be able to mess around with it. Back in the day, we would call that a paper prototype, or just a kind of a throwaway prototype that you could work with, which is now accessible to everybody, which is really great. Because I also think a lot of companies had to pay a ton of money just to get to that POC back in the day. Now it's accessible. Anybody can spin it up within half an hour, right? So that's fantastic. What I think is a misconception is that whole thing of what got you to that won't necessarily work when you're scaling that up for a bigger audience and for a more complex audience. So I think that's when a little bit more skill, knowledge around UX really would go a long way. And I think the misconception is maybe that, that's expensive. It's going to be, that's not going to yield the output or the ROI that we want. And I think it's a misconception because I think UX is probably one of the cheapest ways that you can add the most amount of value to a product. It encourages user loyalty. It encourages all of those things. I think it's an underrated way to just make it better. Instead of adding more features, look at what you've got, make sure that that's working right, that it's the right features for your customers. And UX, the user design process, is a great way to figure that out at a very low risk.
How long does that generally take, right? For the example that you mentioned with the security firm, right? To get through those, maybe for each of those segments or whatever phases you wanted to call them, right? From the end user using the app to the control room person and the dispatch. Yeah. What's a kind of typical journey one sees in such a scenario?
With a product like that, we were already in development, things like that. So it adds some more complexity to it. But I think if we always say the 6-week MVP is a great target. Let's try and get to an MVP prototype in 6 weeks and test it, and then come back, iterate on it, test it again, put it out. And then by the time you get to the exact perfect thing that you want to build, you've got you've tested it, you know it's going to work, you know you've got traction, and you can run with it. So I'd say the time to MVP is getting shorter and shorter. Development's getting much faster. So that's great. So you throw just really solid design in there, you could be up and running in 6 weeks or so.
Wow. Okay. That's pretty short, actually. There you go. In the age of AI, what does designers become builders practically mean?
I think designers have always been the one side of the coin and developers the other, and we've always worked together like that. But I can see more and more how those roles are going to start just mushing together a little bit more. Obviously, there are the kind of, the bits that won't be replaced on either side, but I can see us building together much easy in a more easy way. So for instance, we were never able, like as designers, we were never able to really build software if we didn't have a bunch of coding experience or development experience. Now we can build something that we've designed, that we know what the user experience we want to be. We can just design it and then build it and then have a live thing that we can put out there into the world. I think the same goes for developers, where their work has always been kind of very much behind the scenes to a certain extent, and they're able to try out things, ideas in a more designed way than before. So that's kind of how I see it happening. I think we're going to start merging those roles quite a lot in the next few years.
Yeah, got it. And in terms of creativity, right? We always say it's a human kind of a part of the job, right? Especially in the UX side. Do you see that being replaced mostly by AI today? Tomorrow, sorry.
The creative side, I think it's going to up the median of what is good, right? So I think there's a ton of really awful software out there and horrible experiences. And if AI can bring us to that average, because everybody's talking about how AI produces the average, right? If we can get that average just to something that's really good, that's fantastic. I'm all for that. I think bad software should be something of the past, right? It should be bad. But then what I think is interesting is if you want something above and beyond that, that is where human creativity and our curiosity and just our interaction with the world itself brings a lot of value. If you study art or study design, you'll know that one of the most important things is step away from the screen, go out into the real world, go mess around with stuff, go talk to people, go have experiences, bring that back and feed that into the work. Let that inform the work that's being done. And that's where that magic kind of happens when that's a product or a design or a brand that's just something that's been cooked up right there on the spot or on the computer, or it's really something where you can see there are layers underneath it that's informed it. So I feel like we're still going to have that. I just really hope that AI lifts the bar, the low bar of where design is now. And I think that's all good. I think as long as the users are winning, that's a job well done.
I love that attitude. It's more about embracing AI to make it more efficient. And
Yeah.
I love that other part of it where you go out, experience it and what it means. And sometimes it might be layers. And that cannot come by sitting on the screen, right? It has to be through
No.
layers of interaction and iterations out there. Got it. And in your view, for a company like Pepperplane, right? How does a UX agency need to evolve right now in the next 3 years, 5 years? Let's put it that.
I think 5 years is already far out. I think it's going to be quicker than that. I think our jobs as UX designers and as designers in general is to create experiences that users really love and that facilitate the value flow from these companies, these businesses to their users. And I think it would be really silly not to realize that we're in a place now where that's changing rapidly. And we need to keep up with that. Luckily, as designers, we've got a sense of, every client's different. We know every project is different that we design for. So we already have a little bit of an agility around these kind of these problems. But I think it would be naive to think that we're just going to keep on doing things the way that we have for the last 10 years. I think the landscape is changing. The users we're designing for is changing.
Let's go for a more fun one, right? What would a 30-day holiday expose about Pepperplane when Marie goes on holiday with her kids?
Well, I did that in December, basically. I didn't choose the right month for it, but we did visit family and so on in South Africa, and it was 30 days that I was away from the business. This is the first year
You never checked your email once and never spoke on Teams.
That's unfair. But no, I mean, once again, I keep harping on this, but the team really has it. They've got it. Like, they're all extremely on top of things. If there is anything, I'm not far away. If they need to reach out to me, which is rarely an issue, they take ownership and they run with it. So once again, it's a small team, so that's possible. Larger teams, I think it's more difficult. But I will say, once again, that's where the founder sales side is probably where my focus is going to be next, is how do I get that more, how do I separate that from myself? Because I'd say that's the only thing that would really probably fall over.
Got it. And what would a founder say that instantly tells you they need UX help?
I'd say pain points that they would be experiencing is things like user drop off, engagement dwindling, support tickets. To be honest, the more support tickets you get, normally the worse case for your UX. Those are the things we look at when we're dealing with it. A lot of times it's also not the founder that's feeling that, it's his team or the users that are dealing with it. So those things come out in different symptoms downstream. So user drop off, churn, those types of words normally come up. And then we go downstream and we see, okay, where is this actually happening? Where are users losing interest or, experiencing friction?
Marie, it is great having you on the pod today. Thank you. That's a wrap.
Thank you so much, Simac. It was great. Thanks.